Hey all, and welcome back to Fuzzy Dutchy Gaming and the final episode of the Mageblood hunt. Now we're going something very, very different this time. So what I thought I'd do is explain why to start with, because it's going to seem very, very odd. But we're actually farming yellow tier maps. So there's three main reasons for this. One, I'm just curious to see how certain league mechanics perform in terms of returns in yellow tier maps. Secondly, I'm planning to start another series on my old account, which hasn't done anything this league, which is essentially going to be trying to farm a headhunter as quickly as possible. And I want to know how profitable yellow tier maps are, because it might be that I only have to push my character to be yellow map viable to be able to start farming decent currency. And then lastly, I don't know whether I'm here for league start for the next league. It depends when it starts. I'm on holiday for quite a long time in April. So it may be that I missed the first week of the league. And if so, I need to kind of get experience in how to league start in a league where the economy is already up and running. So, what have we done so far? Well, we've done a few different strategies. So, what I thought I'd do was talk through the strategies that I've done, what the income was, and the pros and cons of each one. So, the first strategy I tried was a fairly simple strategy. Unfortunately, I didn't save the tree. So, I'm going to have to talk through what I did. But it was essentially all of the harvest, all of the delirium nodes apart from these ones here. And then we've taken essence. And that was it. It was harvest, delirium, and essences. And then it was stream of consciousness and block everything that isn't the content that we want to see, and then take in map nodes. If I have time, I'll put a tree into the video description. And that worked really well. Delirium is still pretty decent. In yellow maps, you still get delirium orbs, not in the same quantities you do. When you're in red maps, you pretty much expect to get at least an orb every map if you get to the end and kill the boss. This was not quite as much, but it was still decent, and we're not forcing it in. I did look at maybe spending 10C on a mirror for each map, but it wasn't really worth it because you don't always get orbs at the end. That means you're going to lose money in those occasions where you don't get any. And we don't know what's going to happen next league. And if this is sort of semi-practice for a late league start, it's not much good using something on the map device that may not be there. But overall, this was about an hour and 40 minutes I did this for. And I ended up with a ton of loot. We've got loads of Harvest Life Force. Easily, I would think 2 Divines of Harvest Life Force. We've got all these Delirium Orbs here. 6 Special Essences from Corrupting Essences. And then just, generally lots more currency, essences, scarabs, things like that. And overall, again, this is a strategy I would 100% consider. As long as you can get to the end of a Deli map on tier 8 and kill the boss, you're absolutely fine. It is fairly easy because we're not taking these nodes here that make it harder. Most characters, if you've killed the pinnacle bosses, you should be breezing through these maps. It's all about being quick, essentially. Being quick, looting as you go, and then making sure you kill the boss before the delirium runs out. And that's all there was to it. As long as you get into harvest and you're not about to have the fog expire, it then pauses, so you've got time to go and kill all the monsters in there and loot your harvest. In general, it was just, very, very profitable. So if we go into that excellence next, we're looking at 5.4 divines. Now, this one was absolutely free. This didn't cost any money to do this strat. However, I have got yellow maps in here, and like I said, it values them a bit weird. But overall, I would think, 5 divines comfortably, possibly a little bit more. So again, you're looking at 3 divines profit per hour doing this sort of strat, just in yellow maps with no expenditure. Didn't use the full Atlas tree and only used 2 watchstones. So again, this is something I'd 100% consider because it just needs no materials. You set your tree up and then you just go. If Deli turns up in your map, brilliant. If Harvest does, even more money. If it doesn't, you just run through to the end and kill monsters. The only thing that you will find about doing Deli is that map layout does matter quite a lot. Strand is very linear and very long, so you get more splinters and you get further from the mirror, so you can get better rewards. But overall, I still had Deli Orbs drop in Crimson Temple when I was doing it, in alleyways. It didn't seem to make that much difference. It can just be harder to get to the end on certain layouts because they're not as long. So in maps that loop, for example, they can be very, very difficult to get to the boss, or ones where it might be a square. Again, it can be difficult sometimes to get to the boss. And when you do get there, you've only cleared half the map. So you do want to make sure when you run these Deli maps, if you haven't got something like Strand, that you do a map where the boss is at the end of the map. So something, like Crimson Temple, alleyways, channel, things like that. Obviously, in the next rotation, things like Tropical Islands, Lair are really good. Any map that's linear and has a boss at the end is good for Delirium. So overall, again, this is something I will probably try as a strategy. And this is probably the one I'd go to first because it doesn't require any scarabs or any investment. Then once I built a little bit of money up, if I wanted to try the Legion strategy that we're going to come on to next, then I could do that once I'd farmed some currency in this method. One of the strategies I looked at was Legion and Harvest. Now, this is probably not something you'd do at League start because Harvest is not very profitable early on. The Life Force isn't worth very much currency at all. You could obviously stockpile it for later on, but in terms of immediate returns, it's not very good. However, I've included it because at this point of the league, it is good. So if I want to do a new character on a new account, I want to know how good Harvest is in yellow tier maps. Now, it didn't perform as well as it did in the previous test when I was forcing more Harvest into the map, but I did get quite unlucky on this test. There was several times I went like 4 or 5 maps in a row without Harvest, which is pretty unusual considering we've taken all of the Harvest nodes and a few blockers. So let's go through the tree itself. We're doing essences because it doesn't matter what tier map you're in, essences are always decent returns. I've left 16 points spare because realistically I'm not going to have a whole Atlas tree. At this stage, if you have more points, you could obviously come down and get more essence nodes here. We picked up 3 of the map sustain nodes. For now, I'm just using 2 void stones, as I mentioned, because I'm going to rush, get the pinnacle bosses down, and then I'm going to forget about the other 2. They're not going to factor into my next strategy. And then we've gone and taken all of the Legion nodes, including the ones to get a general, because I'm going to be using polished scarabs rather than gilded, just to keep the cost down. And then we block in the purple plants. Again, if you've got more points, you can block blue. And this is kind of the setup. There are no sextants. There's no scarabs other than the 1 Legion scarab. And there's nothing on the map device. So the cost is going to be your scarab. Essentially is the only thing that costs any money other than your yellow map and rolling the map. Obviously, I would not have this many favorites early on. I'd probably only have 3 or 4. I'd just set them all to strand. But the good thing about this strategy is Harvest doesn't matter what the map type is. For Legion, there are preferred layouts, but anything that's open will be fine for a Legion strategy. And that's all I was doing. I was rushing through Strand, killing the Legions, getting into Harvest when there was one, getting a Harvest and getting through the map as quickly as I can. Now, obviously, this character is way, way, way more decked out than I would have at League Start or on a new account. It was more just to test the profitability per map and whether it's something that's worth doing. If, for example, I can build a character for 1 divine that can farm these maps comfortably, is it better to just do that if I have the goal of a headhunter? Or should I spend 30 divines to get a red tier character going and then farm a headhunter? It's essentially which one is the quickest, since the series is all going to be about getting a headhunter as quickly as possible, which means spending the minimal amount on the character as I can. So let's talk about Legion and how it performed in yellow tier maps, because there was a few things I wanted to know. 1, can you even get all of the generals showing up because I'm only running tier 8 maps? 2, in terms of the incubators, are they much worse than the ones you get at item level 83? And then 3rd, what sort of difference are we looking at in terms of emblems, splinters, and just general rewards? So the first thing to talk about is conversion in terms of the mechanic from the rare monsters. So you'll get monsters where you kill something, and then whatever loot it would drop, it converts it to scarab. So if it was going to drop a unique, it would drop something like a gilded scarab. If it was going to drop a rare, it would be a polished scarab, things like that. These don't pay any attention to map tier. I'm in yellow map, so I should only be able to drop polished and rusted scarabs because gilded scarabs are only available in red tier maps. However, I had a couple of conversions where it spat out gilded scarabs. So this doesn't really matter what tier in. I'm sure it can happen in white tier maps as well. And that's one of the reasons that you run Legion and Harbingers and mechanics like that, because you do get a lot of rares. You get a lot of rares with lots of mods, so you have more chance of getting those sort of things happening. So next thing, how is it in terms of generals? So obviously you can see we've got 2 Maraketh emblems, so Maraketh can definitely show up. We've got all 5 emblems. I've no idea how I ended up with less Karui. I have a feeling I may have dumped some in a wrong tab because that seems very odd there. But yeah, you can get all of the emblems. This is just loot from 1 hour. So in 1 hour doing Alch and Go Legions, I had 2.5 Marakeths, 3.5 Templar, and then a few of the others. These I must have put these in a wrong tab. So in terms of mapping, I was quite quick. It was like just over 3 minutes per map. But you could take this loot, divide it by 18, and it will show you what you would get roughly per map. And essentially, you're looking at about 7 to 8 maps to get a full Maraketh emblem was what I was running at. Next thing I wanted to look at was incubators. Do they drop less? And then when you equip them, are the rewards worse? And the answers were very positive. They don't drop any less. I had an absolute ton of them drop to the point I could keep them on my character for the whole process. And in terms of loot, they seem to drop exactly the same loot. Stack decks still drop in 2 to 4s. The currency can still drop divine orbs and exalts. Obviously, the map is going to drop tier relevant, so these are kind of pointless because they would just drop you like one tier 8 or tier 7 map. But again, it's probably not something I would run. But if you run out of other ones, running these ones, you would get loot drop that's going to be worth some money. So overall, I didn't notice a huge difference other than splinters definitely drop in smaller stacks, but not by much. I have these filtered out to hide anything under 10, and there were plenty of times that it dropped stacks higher than 10. The only thing to take into account is you do have nodes that have a chance to turn splinters into emblems, and obviously if you drop in less splinters, there's going to be less conversion into emblems. But overall, considering this was a tier 8 map, I was just alching them, I wasn't doing anything that made it particularly difficult. The loot was really, really good. We had some decent stuff from our ornate incubators, had an exalted orb, we had some chaos, had some Deli orbs for where delirium just turns up in the map because we block a fair few things. So you do have a chance of stuff like delirium turning up. Got 3 delirium orbs from that, and then just random stuff from the Legion chests. And we ended up with 61 stack decks, which is about 0.6 of a divine in stack decks. And I didn't have diviner incubators on all the time. So if you wanted to, you could farm them up so that you can basically keep them in a constant supply. So we'll go next and let's have a look at the loot. This is what it said with all of the stuff I was picking up. So it included like yellow tier maps, which it seems to value pretty strange. It included Screaming Essences, so I've dumped all of them. So we'll just go into a map and come out so we can get a realistic understanding of what sort of income we were making from these maps. And obviously bear in mind I'm on a character that you would not be running yellow maps with, so take it with a pinch of salt. So it hasn't gone down that much. So we've got just under 4 divines worth of loot, and most of it should sell for what it says. Obviously the incubators are a bit, I don't know if these sell or not, but you could always use them. But overall, we've got a decent supply of loot. The only thing it seems to overvalue is single splinters in some cases, but overall, you're going to be selling the emblems for probably more than what they're listed here. Same with the harvest life force. So the only thing I think I was really unlucky with was harvest. I hardly had any harvest turn up at all, which is a bit strange. We should have like well over 50% chance for harvest to turn up. So got a bit unlucky there. So I would expect to see more returns from harvest. So overall in 18 maps, it was about 4 divines, but we are using 1 scarab, which is about 3C. So if we do 3 times 18, you're looking at not a lot at all, 0.2 of a divine. So it's well over 3.5 divines pure profit from running Legion in yellow maps. So that shows me that's definitely an option for the next series. And it's an option at League Start. I know a lot of people wait until they've got this decked out character in red maps before they start farming Legion. But there's nothing to stop you farming Legion if you've got a character that can comfortably clear T7 maps. So let's say you get to the pinnacle bosses, you get them down and you then need to farm some currency. That character is going to be ample good enough to farm this amount of loot as long as you built a mapping character and not like a slow bosser. So I finished testing out yellow maps, and I probably should have done some more because I didn't actually have enough currency to get the Mageblood and get my flask sorted out. So I did another 3 hours of farming 3 Deli orb maps. I was using the divination orbs because they've dropped in price quite a bit. They dropped loads of stacked decks. I had a couple of big div cards drop as well that were worth a divine each. And I didn't need to do the skitchen ones because I've got plenty of scarabs. So if we go into my currency, I've now got 185 raw divines. I've almost got enough chaos to get another 2 divines if I wanted to. Got a few bits left for sale. I've sold all of my crafts other than 1, which isn't really very good anyway. I'm not sure why I thought this quiver would sell. This might be one we need to redo. Because a crit strike chance with bows is really not a good mod. But we'll leave it there. It might sell. I've got a Maiden Writ left to sell, and then a small cluster jewel for a medium cluster jewel for 35C, and obviously my headhunter. I've got that for sale just in case someone wants to buy it. It's priced about right because it's well rolled. The cheapest uncorrupted is 95, but they've not got the same strength, dexterity, and life as what this belt has. So I've left it at 97, and I'm pretty sure when someone actually looks to get a decently rolled headhunter, it will sell. So the currency on top of the 97 for the Mageblood was sitting at 100 or 282 divines, which is pretty much what a 4 flask uncorrupted Mageblood goes for. If it turned out it went up 2 divines, I've got like easily a divine's worth of exalts. Pretty much got 2 divines worth of chaos. I've still got 7 5-way Legion sets, I think. Yeah, 7 5-way Legion sets that we could sell. We've got loads of different bits and bobs. Lots and lots of scabs that I want to keep hold of for now. Nothing really in here that's worth any money. So why don't I have a Mageblood sitting in my stash? And it's mainly because I don't want one, in all honesty. Now, Mageblood is without doubt the best belt in the game, but it's a belt that makes your very good build better. It doesn't make a mediocre build as good as something like Headhunter for mapping, and it doesn't make a mediocre build anywhere near as good as if I would spend this 300 divines that I'm going to have, or 280 divines, on gear for my character. I could double and triple my DPS with that money, get loads of defenses in, get much more speed in. Mageblood won't do that. It will improve things, but it's not going to give me the same effect that spending 300 divines on gear would do. And that's why I'm not buying it, because I don't want to mislead people to think you can basically get a bog standard tornado shot build, put Mageblood on it, and you've got like an end game build. You don't. The better your build is, the better Mageblood makes it. Headhunter carried my build for a lot of the Delirium maps. It's doable without it, but it just made it much, much quicker. And in the content that I like doing, which is Delirium, Legion, Harbingers, Harvest, Headhunter brings a ton of benefits because you stack an insane amount of rare mods when you're in those maps. Whereas if I wanted to go and farm invitations, Headhunter gives me nothing. However, I've got plans for that 280 divines, which don't include a Mageblood. And if I want one, I'll just wait until the very end of the league. They'll go down to standard prices, which is about 240 divines, and I'll buy one then. But in all honesty, I've never in my whole history of PoE had a build that was worthy of a Mageblood in terms of, is that 280 divines best spent on a Mageblood? And the answer was always no, because I had other bits I could add to the build that would give more power than Mageblood. Mageblood to me is a belt that you go for at the end when all the rest of your gear is finished, or within reason finished, where if I wanted a bow upgrade, it's going to be a mirror, or if I wanted to upgrade my chest, it's 80 divines. Whereas on this character, I could probably get a better chest for like 6 divines. I could get an enchanted helmet for 6 to 10 divines. I could go and get a +2 arrow bow for say 60 or 70. We could get a +1 arrow quiver. There is tons that I could do that would give more power to this build than Mageblood, which is why I haven't purchased it. The purpose of this series was to really prove to myself that I can do it, because it's something I've said I'm going to do every league, and then I'll start, and then I just don't finish. So what I thought we'd do to close the video out is go through my experience of the whole thing, how I felt it went, would I change anything, what would I do differently, and ultimately, is it worth it? So last question first, is it worth it? And that all depends on you. So if you wanted this as like a trophy almost to sit in standard, to say in 3.20, I actually farmed myself a Mageblood through currency, then obviously it's something you can do. And you will get satisfaction out of farming that amount of currency and having that belt sitting in your stash tab. If, however, you're farming it because you think it's going to make your build brilliant, check out the POB first, get some endgame flasks in, and see what it does to your build. Because I guarantee you, unless you've got a really, really, really finished build, there's other things you could do that will make your build better and more fun. So what were the main things that would put me off doing this again? And there's only one. I didn't mind the time it took at all, because I play the game because I enjoy it. So it doesn't matter for me if it takes me 60, 70, 80, 90 hours. If I've got that time to put in and I'm enjoying playing the game, it doesn't really matter to me what I'm farming, as long as I'm enjoying the content. And for the majority of the time, I was. Where I wasn't was where I did start looking at per hour or per map. And I was like, this strategy's like 40 chaos less every 2 maps than my other one. And I was starting to stress about things like that, because it meant I was going to take longer to get the belt. So it's just resetting your mind to remind yourself that you're playing this game for fun. If you're absolutely hating grinding for a Mageblood, then what's the point? It's not going to be much different when you get it. Yes, the build's going to feel smoother. The game's going to be slightly more fun, but it doesn't drastically change the game at all. So what else did I find a frustration? And it was trading. And that really depended on what farming strategy I was doing. Some things are very, very easy to buy and sell. So if we go into our sets here, these are super easy to sell if you're willing to take. I wouldn't even say loss, because on trade, you're probably not selling these two anyway. These probably won't sell in bulk. And the only ones you get money for are Marika. You're not going to get this. I've had them priced for 3 for 1 divine. They haven't been selling at all. So let's say you were selling 3.5 for 1 divine. Then that means for your 10, you're basically going to get 3 divines. You can go on to TFT and sell 10 sets for 4 divines easily. I've got 2 people that I've added on my friends list that basically just buy them whenever I've got them. So I'll sell 10 sets of 4 divines. It's not insane currency, but it's easy to liquidate. I'll just whisper someone, I've got 10 sets, join their hideout, they give me 4 divines, job done. That's that trade done in a minute. Whereas other things in little bits and bobs that you've got to sell yourself, it might take an hour over time to sell that loot. So these are nice and easy to liquidate. Stack decks are the one thing I'm going to aim to farm from here on in. They sell so easy just on trade and so quickly. The more you've got, the more you can charge for these. The last lot I had, I got 5 divines for them, and I sold them for 74 stack decks for 1 divine. And as I say, I was doing the delirium maps with the divination orbs. I was dropping loads of these, and I was waiting until I had 5 or 6 divines worth in bulk, selling them, and I will get whispers in minutes. Same thing for if you're invitation farming, the more you've got, the quicker they sell. Harvest juice as well. Anytime I had harvest in my farming strategy, these yellow life force and the purple and blue, to be honest, sell so quickly for divines and it's nice and easy. Same with your embers, they fly off the shelf as well. And the last grab I had was I was doing this as like a side project. So I already had all of my league specific tabs full of stuff. So I couldn't use them because it's going to be adding stuff to my income that it shouldn't be, because it's stuff I farmed before I even started this series. So my essence tab, this was a pain. If I was to do this again, I would empty all of my league specific tabs and dump them into quad tabs and leave them at the bottom in my inventory and use all of these to store loot instead of dump tabs. It's also much easier to sell stuff from these tabs because they stack. So I could have 99 deafening essences of greed stacked in this tab or whatever it stacks up to. If this was in just a sale tab, you can only have 9 in each. So it gets a bit annoying managing the space in your sale tab, and it adds time to selling. So I think if I was to do it again, as I said, I would strip all of the stuff out of all my league specific tabs, dump them somewhere else for later, and then I'd start the project. But there are some massive positives to come out of this for me, and that is that I now feel much less intimidated about farming for items that 5 or 6 leagues ago I wouldn't even consider buying. Like, I'm a bit of a cheapskate when it comes to builds, and maybe 7 leagues ago I wouldn't buy an item if it was more than an exalt, which it would have been at the time. But like, I'm not paying an exalt for an item, that's ludicrous. And now I'm kind of wouldn't bat an eyelid at paying 50 divines for a decent chest piece, or 100 divines for a decent bow, because I know now different ways to farm, how to convert currency better, and I know that I can target something if I really, really want it. There's never going to be an item more expensive for me that I'm going to farm than a Mageblood, so I know it's possible. And I know roughly how much the strategies I like doing make, and it's about 4 to 5 divines an hour. If we're not counting selling, it's probably 6, but I like to include everything, although whether you include selling time is really up to you, because a lot of people don't sell when they're actively playing the game. They'll put everything in their stash tab to sell when they weren't planning to actually map anyway, and then they'll just sit watching some TV or something and sell as they go along. And it's definitely made me really excited about whatever build I decide to do next, if that's this league or next league, because I know that these items are not out of the equation if I have to grind 10 divines to craft a pair of gloves, or if I have to grind 20 divines to craft like an amulet. I know it's well within my capabilities to do it and do it fairly quickly. And that's where I've always had problems with builds in the past, is I would basically put about 30 divines into a build. Whenever it came to the point where each item was maybe 6 or more divines to upgrade it, I would just leave it because the build did most of what I wanted it to do. Would spend in 6 divines on a better claw if it was a lightning strike build. Make me do any more content? Probably not. But I do like pushing builds, and it's something that I've definitely had a barrier in place before. Whereas now this has been like, well, I haven't bought any upgrades for basically 60 odd hours of gameplay, and I still enjoyed the game. So I know that it's within my sort of capabilities to do it, and that's quite encouraging. So it's certainly not something I'd recommend anyone do unless they're at the point where Mageblood is the final part of the build that they need. But at that point, you might be able to do it much more efficiently than me, because my build wasn't the best. So I wasn't able to go and do like super juicing strategies that might produce more profits. I had to go for fairly easy strategies and then build up a little bit once I got the currency to get the headhunter and make the build perform a little bit better. So as I mentioned, the reason I didn't buy the belt is because I want to do a new series on a different account. So the Mageblood would just sit here probably depreciating because it's going to eventually get down to the price it would be in standard. So I'm going to start a brand new series on the channel on my alt account, which I haven't even got to Act 2 yet. I'm going to go on and do Tornado Shot from the ground up to see how quickly we can get to this sort of standard of build. So that's it for the series, really. We didn't end up getting a Mageblood, but that's purely because I've decided I didn't want to buy one, but we've got the currency to be able to do that once the belt sells. So, yep, on to the next project. Really looking forward to it. Thank you for staying with me on this journey. Hope it might give people ideas about farming or how long it actually takes to do this if you're just doing sort of normal mapping strategies. Take care and see you in the next one.